Join me as I dive into Don't Fear the Reaper, Book 2 of the Indian Lake Trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones. Does it live up to expectations or fall flat, as the sequel sometimes will? Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things that we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this channel, and I'm bringing a horror book review to you today. This will be spoiler light for most of it, and full spoil commentary right at the end for those of you who've already read the book. If you enjoy this, be sure to give us a like, and we hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Don't Fear the Reaper. Fairly recent horror novel by Stephen Graham Jones. As I mentioned, it's book 2 of the Indian Lake Trilogy. This one came out in February of 2023 and is horror. Someone recommended this series to me, and it continues to bug me that I can't remember who did. It may have been somebody who participated in one of our Try Reader Twitter tournaments back in the day when we did one that was horror themed. That might be where I got this on my radar. I guess I could go back and check those records at some point. Regardless, I was thinking, yeah, I'm ready for a new horror author. There really aren't that many horror authors I've gotten into and enjoyed. I mean, Stephen King, of course. Some of the classics out there. Shirley Jackson recently with The Haunting of Hill House. But Stephen Graham Jones is writing more recent things. And I'm like, what if this is good? Well, I dove into book 1, My Heart is a Chainsaw, and it blew me away. You can check out my review on that, already available here on the channel. And it left me with no doubt that I needed to be reading Stephen Graham Jones. So here I am, book 2, ready to share with you what I thought. The setting of this story is the same rural central Idaho town, make-believe, of Proof Rock, alongside Indian Lake, an artificial lake formed when the Indian River was dammed up many years ago. This story takes place 4 years after the events of the first one. Our protagonist is again Jennifer Daniels, formerly insisting on being called Jade as a troubled high schooler. She has just recently returned to town after 4 years in the clink. She was wrongfully convicted after the events of the Independence Day massacre for killing her father. But with the help of a massive legal team being funded by one Letha Mondragon, she finally was able to get that conviction overturned and has been sprung free. That previous Independence Day massacre, there were both real and supernatural players behind the killings that happened there, and officials don't believe in the paranormal, the supernatural. They kind of dismiss that stuff. So things weren't looking good for Jade Daniels based on that. I mean, she's the creepy one in town who's into slashers as people are getting killed. But the real reason she ended up going to jail was that one of her classmates happened to film video of the moment when Jade's father leaps back up out of the water. Everyone thought he was dead at that point. And she turns and swings at him, thinking something's coming at her, and she hits him with her machete, and down he goes. So it looks like she killed him. There was so much more going on, so much more to it. That one little video, while very damning, didn't show the whole story. And she does get off, finally, after considerable appeal, for 2 key reasons. 1, Jennifer was not guilty of that murder because the video clearly shows he already had a fatal wound. Someone else had already killed him. He just wasn't quite dead yet. I'm not dead yet. Okay, he was going down, though, so she can't really be guilty of killing him when someone else really kind of already had. Medical testimony even saying there's no way he would have survived the injury he already had. But secondly, and perhaps conveniently, his body's never been discovered. Of all the people killed in Proof Rock at that massacre, her dad is missing. No body, no death, no murder. She goes free. All that said, Jennifer has a cloud of suspicion hanging over her as she returns to Proof Rock. Everybody here knows she went to prison for her actions on July 4th. She's been released now, but that doesn't mean she's been exonerated in the court of public opinion. People don't really consider her innocent. She's still an outsider, she's still sketch. Jennifer found her town and life quite a bit different as she's returned to Proof Rock. And when we start this story, she hasn't been here very long. She's still experiencing just trying to get her life back on track. One thing that is quite different for Jennifer is the fact that she goes by Jennifer now. She'd insisted on Jade. That was the name she chose for herself back at that time. But no, she's moved on. She's left her high school days behind, and now she is Jennifer. Also, all that slasher genre stuff that she was so into, nope, I'm done with that. That's the past. I'm an adult now. Only as she gets back to Proof Rock, she finds Letha, her friend now, picked up the mantle and has totally spent the last 4 years diving into horror and slasher movies. She knows all these films now. She knows more than Jennifer does because there's 4 years of time that Letha has stayed current on these movies and Jennifer was in prison. They have bonded over past trauma, but now they also have some shared interests. Even though, again, Jennifer doesn't want to talk about these things, Letha keeps trying to pull that inner slasher girl back out. It's wonderful, though, to see in this story how Letha and Jennifer grow a more mature and real friendship. They've got that bond from the past, the trauma, the tragedy they shared, but there's just more to it between the two of them. They do kind of click, even though they come from very different pasts. And yet there are some similarities, some PTSD that they both have. One of the things that has changed, however, that's a little more uncomfortable for Jennifer is Letha got married to Banner Tompkins, former classmate of both of theirs, and a former jock, star football player, who's now a sheriff's deputy. Well, on probation. He's just got the job. And, well, he's married to Letha, so okay, I'm going to have to interact with you as well, is what Jennifer's discovering. Okay, all that we learn very early in the book, and it kind of sets the stage for a crazy 36 hours that's going to come at us now. A massive snowstorm that's going to shut down the town, make everybody just be stuck here, cut off from the outside, while that same storm causes an infamous serial killer who has been captured and is being transported to break loose, to get free, and of course end up in Proof Rock because it's a slasher book, right? Oh, and dude has a hook for a hand. Of course. As the book proceeds, the bodies start dropping. The mysteries multiply, and Jennifer, Letha, and Banner end up in the midst of a fight for their lives, but not necessarily from the source that you might have expected. This is full of plot twists and revelations. A horror novel that's again leaning heavily into slasher tropes, this time specific to the sequel of a slasher series. And it does this marvelously. It's so darn entertaining. For plot depth, Jones has plotted out a story here that is beautifully tied to the events of the first book while weaving in fresh characters and elements for book 2. And underneath the plot here, and this was true of book 1, but it's clarified more here in book 2, there's history to Proof Rock. History to this lake, to this region, that's adding some richness to the events, that's directly impacting why these things are going on. Jones leads us on a great mystery in this novel as we try to puzzle out just what really is happening, and the ending? Massively satisfying. For characters, Jones is doing an exceptional job here. He's aged up his characters. We had a passage of time of 4 years, and many of the characters in this book we met in book 1. These are survivors of the massacre, some surviving more fully than others. We have people who were devastatingly injured, who 4 years later still are dealing with the effects of those injuries. Psychological trauma, but also physical trauma that you don't just bounce back from. Some wounds last long. And then there's the challenge of just moving on with life. So we've got Jade, who spent most of the last 4 years in prison. That's had an impact on her outlook on life, her development as a character. But all the other people who stayed in Proof Rock had to pick up the pieces, had to try to move forward in the aftermath of such a massive tragedy. It has shaped everybody. And while each person has made their individual choices and had their own unique experiences to become who they are, Jones has written these characters very realistically in showing how you move forward from an event like that. Jennifer Daniels and Letha Mondragon are the ones who are most powerfully transformed, I think, from book 1 to 2. Jones gives us some fantastic character development there. But one other fun point I want to share about the characters. While Jade may have put the slasher genre behind her, it's not just Letha who has picked up the slack. Multiple characters in this novel were impacted by Jade's past, as she was the only one who knew what was really going on in book 1 because of her love of slashers. So others were like, we need to know about this stuff. We need to prepare for a possible future. So there's a whole bunch of people who are all into slashers now when Jennifer does not want to talk about them. Humorously, at one point, she's actually asking herself, was I this annoying when all I wanted to talk about was slashers? Because these people are driving me crazy. For writing style, Jones shifts from book 1 to book 2, and that book 1 was very much written from Jade's perspective. And he actually used that in a way so that we as readers were guessing, is this really happening? Is all of this real? Are we seeing a very skewed perspective from an mentally unhealthy person? Well, that stuff's over now. We know in Proof Rock, stuff happens. So Jones lets us enjoy all the characters more here, just all experiencing this crazy novel, giving us point of view chapters from multiple different people. Retired Sheriff Hardy gets in on the fun, Letha Mondragon, Banner Tompkins, others have chances to give us their perspectives. It enriches the story in new ways, and I really enjoyed that. For themes, this book has themes that are pretty consistent with the slasher genre and what book 1 was about. It's still a commentary on the slasher genre, getting rather meta again, because this story leans so much in the tropes and they're recognizing it as it's happening. If Scream was to be taken a little more seriously, it would be this book. Another theme would be being a survivor when the system is out to get you. Jennifer was wrongfully convicted, serving time, when genuinely she was the hero of the story. But she fit the profile for someone who's never going to come out to anything good. She rightfully, therefore, distrusts authority, and she's never going to rely on the powers that be to come and save her. Another theme is the impact of trauma, because boy, there was some trauma in book 1. And we see in this book how it can make you stronger, but not without scars. But for some people, trauma destroys you, and some of that you never come back from. That's on display here too. Finally, enhanced for this novel is the theme of the indigenous perspective. Jennifer Daniels has always been somewhat an outsider because of her Native American heritage. Another significant character is introduced in this book with a similar heritage, and they play into that even more strongly now, the way Jones writes this. Indigenous people of North America definitely got the short end of the stick throughout our history here, and this book emphasizes there are impacts from that still lingering, persisting on our society, on Indigenous people, and it definitely has an impact on this book. For trigger warnings, well, come on, it's horror, people. There's violence and gore again, numerous graphic deaths, slasher-style killings, detailed descriptions with blood, trauma, and body horror all the way through this book. It's not for the squeamish. There's also psychological trauma. Again, the PTSD that some of these characters are facing after the Independence Day massacre. And then survivor's guilt that some people are feeling. You know, they made it through. Why them? Why so many others that they cared for are dead? Another theme is incarceration and legal injustice. Again, Jennifer went to prison for 4 years when she was wrongfully convicted. Then she gets out of prison and now she's on her own just to try to fix her life again. And we see her actually missing prison. Not because she wants to be in prison, but because the real world is scary and there's not a lot of help for the previously incarcerated. So that is on display here. Another theme is grief and loss. I mean, obviously, there's tons of grief because of the prior deaths in My Heart as a Chainsaw, and people were traumatized from that. But now there's more deaths, sudden deaths of loved ones all over this book. There's really a few more themes that I could go into. Racism and historical violence is mentioned here, kind of a commentary on the mistreatment of indigenous people here in our country. Abuse and family dysfunction is here, but because, again, Jade's father had been very abusive to her. There were some really weird family dynamics that cause scars and impact how you move forward in life. And drug use and addiction are mentioned here. Some characters using alcohol, drugs, substance abuse. They're going way overboard with things. So be aware. All of these things, if any of that's too close to the home, gonna trigger for you, stay away. My rating, however, is a 5 out of 5. I would recommend this to anyone who loves a good horror novel, and especially if you liked the first book, you're gonna love this one because it just takes things up a whole nother notch. It's an exceptionally well-crafted novel, bringing us a fresh, new slasher story, intricately tied to the book it follows. I love it. That's where you stop now if you haven't read this book yet, and I do hope you'll go check it out. But I'm going to go into full spoil section now, so don't stick around unless you have already read the book. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The Spoiler Room.
So, you read the book already. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Here's a few final thoughts for those of you who know it all. Cinnamon and Ginger Baker. Wow. While only one of them showed it on the outside, both of these young ladies were incredibly traumatized by the Independence Day massacre. Cinnamon's role in this novel, amazing. The lengths that she took to make sure more people were made to suffer just as she had, and then hopefully see things all come out to be against Jade. I've got a convenient scapegoat. Yet more people impacted by Jade's passion for slasher cinema. This was amazing in that we got 3 different killers in this book. We've got the serial killer, Dark Mill South, who might have not even had an impact here, might not have bothered anybody if Jennifer and Letha hadn't gone across the lake to Terra Nova, where the construction has been going on, because that's where he's hiding out. And they only went there because of the chaos already going on that Cinnamon was actually up to. So that triggers Dark Mill South to get into this. But yeah, Cinnamon Baker, she's on a rampage. So troubled, but so smart. And then we've got Sheriff Hardy's drowned daughter returned as a spirit elk to get revenge on the few responsible for her drowning that are still alive, that survived the previous massacre. Man, the killing is coming from so many directions. I loved Sheriff Hardy's role in this book. I hope you did too. He's a significantly diminished person physically after barely surviving the massacre in book 1. I mean, his guts were slashed out, but he survived. And in this book, he's still incredible. I'd say he's a better character than he was in the first book. I really appreciated his genuine relationship with Jade and what he does to advance things in this plot, in this book. And then that ending with him and his daughter. Wow. I enjoyed the slasher references that Jade doesn't get because of her 4 years in prison. Humor in the midst of horror, which is totally a slasher thing. So well done, Jones. So in the end, the body count in this book actually was much less than My Heart as a Chainsaw. I mean, there's no massacre of the scale that happened on Indian Lake during that movie in book 1. There's more sources of death, but less actual killings. but the plot twists, more impressive in this book. Now just wait for book 3, because the end of a slasher trilogy is where they always pull out all the stops, and I'm sure Stephen Graham Jones has something similar in mind. All right, that's where I'll stop. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any thoughts on it, any comments on my comments, or anything you want to say about this book or author, put them down in the comment box. I do read those and I do respond. And if you want to interact with my son Zach or I in other ways, down in the show notes, we've got all sorts of links there. Our Discord server, you can join us there. Our Patreon page, where you can become a supporter of Fantasy for the Ages, even social media links and email. Check it out. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.